Hey there Jedi Masters, Knights, and Younglings. Welcome to Which Lightsaber Form, the video series where I take the role of a Jedi Blade Master, evaluating characters from different franchises and deciding which lightsaber forms suit them best. Today, I will be examining the fighting style of Afro Samurai, the vengeful swordsman of a Shampoo feudal and futuristic Japan. First, let's look at Shii-Cho, the most basic of lightsaber forms. Often taught to younglings, but when mastered, an incredible tool in open combat. Straight up, this form has the strongest correlation with Afro's style, not just because he found himself fighting against hordes of enemies, which is one of the main strengths of Shii-Cho, though that is one reason, but because of his sensibilities in combat. This is perhaps best showcased in his fight against the android Afro Samurai. The machine was designed to replicate Afro's style, almost exactly, his blade strokes and his martial skill. For a time, it seems the android has the better of Afro because he is an exact mirror, only much faster.
What happens when your reflection moves faster than you?
But when Afro reflects on his training, he remembers what his swordman taught him about essentially being formless, to let instinct guide his actions instead of form and style.
Become unpredictable. Strike from your subconscious mind. Let your moves flow out from your individual essence.
This is also reflected in a passage regarding Kit Fisto with regards to Form 1. In the sequence, he says how Form 1 makes him unpredictable and random. Digging deeper into the subconscious, this is the way of Form 1 at a master level. One of the most interesting aspects of Form 1, for me, is how freeform it can actually be. It's a simple style, less intricate than Form 4, or brutal as Form 7, but it's unpredictable in the sense that not even the practitioner knows what he will do next. Within Star Wars lore, Shii-Cho is primarily taught as a lesson for students to learn how to use the Force to guide their actions, rather than their biological senses or martial skill. By that same token, Afro has learned to do the same, but instead of using the Force, he uses his innate instinct.
Even the most masterful opponent will fall from a strike that has no history or reference.
It also helps that Afro's more overt style translates to the broad and sweeping blade strokes of Shii-Cho. As a Blade Master, I would congratulate Afro for his masterful application of the form, and advise him to continue pursuing the depths of Shii-Cho, pairing him with a Shii-Cho Master. Second, we have Makashi, the Fencer's form, perhaps the most disciplined of all forms, less about bombarding your foe with heavy cleaves, or overwhelming them with quick slashes, but outmatching their tempo, momentum, and timing. For Afro, I don't think he has any real showings or aspirations for Form 2. He does not adhere to the central line tactics of Makashi, often fighting outside of that central line to demolish his opponents through flank subversion, either through his acrobatics or his katana. As a Blade Master, I would not encourage the use of the form, as it would oppose his more broad style of combat. Third, we have Soresu, the defensive form, designed to be an impenetrable defense against any enemy that is coming at you with everything they have, whether by way of a blaster or a lightsaber. Again, I don't think this applies to Afro. He can be a defensive fighter, but he does not weather the storm by batting away attacks with his blade. In fact, as I'll get into more later, when pressed, Afro tends to use a supplemental form known as Sokan to get himself out of a pickle. As a Jedi Master watching Afro, I may be inclined to recommend a more staunch defense, though this might be detrimental to his overall style. Fourth is Ataru, the acrobatic form, marked by its elaborate movements and energetic blade sequences. Next to Shii-Cho, I think this has a close alignment with Afro's style, but not because of its elaborate blade work. As a swordsman, his attack sequences are rather simplified, on the same attack vectors as a Shii-Cho user. Where he aligns with Ataru is his unarmed martial skill and acrobatic sensibilities. Again, I think this also applies to Soken, which again, I'll get into later, as it really does not apply to one form, but Ataru does have his applications in Afro's style. As a lightsaber instructor, I would direct Afro to continue his studies of Ataru, especially with regards to unarmed combat and acrobatics. Fifth, we have Shien and Djem, the Perseverance forms, characterized by fluid counterattacks, taking your opponent's strikes and returning them in kind. Same as with Form 3, in order to have a solid foundation with Form 5, one has to lock down and weather the storm. The difference between Soresu and Djem is that Soresu users simply keep batting their opponent away, while Djem users attack back with more ferocity. For Afro Samurai, this would not be the case. It's true we've seen him use counterattack in the natural flow of combat, but it's less deliberate than an Anakin or a Luke Skywalker. Afro is less of a deliberate fighter, and one who goes with the flow. As a battle master, I would recommend the use of Form 5, but more as a supplement. There are times where Afro Samurai suffers when being beat down by an opponent, and instead of looking for better positioning within the environment, which is not always there, it might be better to hold its ground. Next we have Niman, the moderation form, the most balanced of all of their techniques. It's not exactly the most powerful or fastest form, but it was perhaps the most useful in a variety of situations. There are some similarities between one who uses Niman and the style of Afro, but based on this comment in the anime,
I say we send the great Russian warrior Ivanov. He has a unique style now to Japan. It will unbalance Afro.
It would seem that Afro is tied to the styles of Japan, rather than applying all kinds of combat styles that are present within the show. I would even say Form 6 is not something Afro himself deals with very well. Based on his fights with Kuma and Sumanai, both were fighters who used rather unorthodox and mixed martial arts, and each time Afro found himself on the losing end, he was forced to find better quarter because he could not withstand them straight up. As a lightsaber instructor, I would encourage Afro Samurai to diversify his fighting palette, perhaps training with a Chinese or Western master, or in the context of Star Wars, an Ichani or Tiraskasi master, not so he can apply those techniques to his own style, but so he can better defend against different kinds of looks. 7th we have Juyo and Vaapad, the ferocity forms, identified by erratic and strong movesets. It was essentially the jazz of lightsaber combat, seemingly awkward but totally controlled. Generally, it was banned by being taught to the Jedi and celebrated by Sith because it required deep wells of passion. In terms of the mental requirements of Form 7, passion, ferocity, and intensity, Afro Samurai does not match up. He's a rather stoic swordsman, both inside and outside of combat. In terms of the physical requirements of Form 7, unpredictability, staccato blade work, and power, Afro has some matches. The issue here is that while a Form 7 user's application of the form is quite deliberate, trying to offset their opponent, Afro Samurai is not so exact. That's one of the key differences between Shii-Cho and Juyo. Though they are very similar in the sense that their mental requirements of diving deep into one's emotional depths, one is varied by the flow of things, while the other is a masterwork of combative compilation. One of the requirements of Form 7 is that one can only master his foundation when at least 3 other forms were mastered. As a blade master, I don't think I would set Afro Samurai down the path of Juyo or Vaapad. He did not have the passion required, nor the multifaceted martial training to apply it. Afro's current style is a Shii-Cho purist with a slight supplement of Ataru, but most of all, he uses his fair share of the supplemental form of Soken. Soken, as I promised I would explain earlier in the video, revolves around using one's environment for a better tactical advantage. In the movies, the most famous application of this was between Anakin and Obi-Wan.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
Afro Samurai finds himself using the environment very often, but most of all, he finds himself using it when he is under duress, looking for a better perch to attack his opponent from, or simply getting out of harm's way. As his battle master, I would recommend he pursue the philosophies of Shii-Cho, using Ataru in a more proactive way, instead of using it reactively through Soken. I would also recommend he use Niman as a way to get better acquainted with other styles, so he could be better equipped to deal with them, much in the way Dooku knew the other forms, inside and out, even if he applied Makashi as a primary form. It also wouldn't hurt for Afro to learn more stand-up defense, particularly with Djem So, which is more in line with his flowing style. I think Afro Samurai would naturally follow the path of the Shii-Cho master. He does not have a lot of reason to change what he is doing. After all, he has taken the #1 headband twice, and though he is not a prideful individual, he also seems rather static. Of course, this is all my opinion, based on the lore of Star Wars and Afro Samurai. Do you agree that Afro Samurai was a Shii-Cho purist, or do you believe he holds a different combination? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, peace, love, may the Force be with you, and remember, it's nothing personal, just revenge.